Good evening and welcome to Checkpoint. Now, the deadline to file presidential petitions at the Supreme Court will lapse in a little under 24 hours from now, marking yet another phase of this prolonged election period. Meanwhile, the country grapples with the question of reforming the constitution for a more inclusive government. As another week of debate begins tonight, one man seems certain of the way forward. Dr. Uhuru Aukot joins me for a one-on-one interview. That is later on, but let's take a look at our top stories first. The All Saints Cathedral turns 100 as celebrations see Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga's first handshake since controversial election.
He could have been like the leader of the opposition and be in the house, lead his troops, and form a shadow cabinet.
The answer to marginalization is not secession. The answer is visionary leadership and strengthening of the evolved system of government.
Cessation talks heat up the coast as debate on political inclusion takes shape. Clock ticks as Monday's deadline inches closer. And tonight, one-on-one with Dr. Uhuru Aukot on Checkpoint. Also on this bulletin tonight, it's silver for Kenya, as Mary Keitanya's 3-year reign is brought to a screeching halt as Shalane Flanagan becomes the first American woman to win the New York Marathon in 40 years. We'll have those details for you in this bulletin as well. Now, the All Saints Cathedral marked 100 years since its establishment. A special celebratory service marked an unexpected moment in the country's murky politics. Political rivals Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga shared their first public handshake since the October 26th election that left voters in the country deeply divided. Shadrach Miti attended the service and now reports.
For the Anglican faithful in the country, this special mass offered them a chance to follow the preaching of the Canterbury Archbishop Justin Welby, who also serves as the symbolic head of the Anglican communion in the world. But from a political standpoint, the mass presented the perfect platform for Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta to meet for the first time since the divided October 26th presidential repeat polls boycotted by Odinga and his followers. And perhaps understanding the country's top leadership, including the president, the opposition chief and the Chief Justice David Maraga, were in attendance. Archbishop Justin Welby chose to amplify the message of reconciliation.
I'm not calling for mediation, but for the steady and long-term work of building structures of reconciliation, the capacity to deal with the nation's challenges in a way that brings peace and a future, even when there is deep disagreement.
Cognizant of how divisive the current political situation in the country is, he insisted on the need for the church to remain the source of light in darkness, ready to give direction even in the most challenging times.
Reconciliation, tragically, is profoundly rare. It is unknown in most countries, and even in the church.
And perhaps aware of the debate surrounding dialogue between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, the Anglican Church head appeared to support the idea, but was quick to point out that his advice was never related to the prevailing political standoff.
I'm not talking about results and outcomes of elections. That would be interference by me as an ignorant outsider. But I'm talking about how disagreements are dealt with.
And when it was the president's turn to speak, Kenyatta chose to say this.
I think we heard your message of reconciliation. And I hope that every single person in this room has also heard that message.
Although Odinga did not give a speech, it is this moment between him and the president that won the day. Shadrach Miti, KTN News.
The debate on amendment of the 2010 Constitution has resurfaced, with key proponents of this move, including the Church, insisting that it is the only way to enhance inclusivity in government. Tonight, our political affairs reporter Murimi Mwangi revisits the history behind the new proposal for the Prime Minister's post.
As the revolt against years of perceived marginalization of opposition zones hit a fever pitch ahead of the first multi-party elections of 1992, retired President Daniel Arap Moi's handlers, led by then Attorney General Amos Wako, crafted the infamous Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 1992. Seemingly to contain the sweeping opposition wave. The bill suggested replacement of the vice president's position with that of a prime minister and a deputy, both to be appointed by the president. An idea which was fiercely fought within KANU and opposition ranks.
Sasa utakuwa umepanga mpango wa kufanya watu wao wakipigana. Huyu atakuwa prime minister, anataka kufanya hivi. Huyu ni president, anataka kwenda njia hii.
Fast forward to 25 years later, in the wake of a highly divided Kenya, split between those celebrating President Uhuru Kenyatta's re-election and those protesting Kenyatta's 98% win in the repeat poll, boycotted by millions of opposition leader Raila Odinga's supporters. And the debate on amendment of the 2010 Constitution has resurfaced.
To provide for the president to appoint a prime minister and 2 deputies as part of the executive of the winning party or coalition.
Much as that may be desirable given the context in which you operate, the solution lies in a free, fair, and credible election.
Odinga's camp is rooting for electoral reforms to end impunity of electoral fraud. NASA CEO Norman Magaya insisting these changes must be followed by a fresh election in 90 days. Kenyatta's camp, though opposed to NASA's suggestion for return to the ballot, supports constitutional amendments. Majority Leader in the National Assembly, Aden Duale, suggesting creation of a powerful office of official opposition leader.
It's not about creation of offices. We think that the current structure of government that we have, if we have free and fair election, you will have a system where those who lose will be happy to have lost fairly.
Honorable Raila Odinga, if he was a leader of the minority, he could have been like the leader of the opposition and be in the house, lead his troops, and form a shadow cabinet.
Article 108, subsection 3 of the 2010 Constitution alludes that a minority leader in parliament has to be a person, presumably an elected or nominated legislator picked by the second largest party or coalition of parties in the House, a position currently held by Suba South MP John Mbadi at the National Assembly and Bungoma Senator Moses Wetangula at the Senate. Consequently, the presidential candidate and running mate who emerged second in the race to State House has to oversee the opposition agenda from outside any elective office.
The mistake we made as a country in the 2010 Constitution was to lock out presidential candidates and their running mates not to be elected from single constituencies.
But if you have elections that are manipulated by the system to produce a predetermined results, that's what we are going to resist.
But across the country, opinion is divided among ordinary Kenyans.
Been left outside the government since 1963. Just as I said before, that bad leadership is the price good citizens pay for letting bad people to govern them.
Shida ya kuwa na kiti tu kimoja cha uongozi ndio inaleta hii shida yote juu. Inaonekana kama kabila moja ama mbili zinakuwa represented kwa parliament ama kwa uongozi.
Murimi Mwangi, KTN News.
Tomorrow midnight marks the deadline for any Kenyan disputing Uhuru Kenyatta's re-election to lodge a petition at the Supreme Court. Although the registrar is yet to receive any petition, on the political front, pressure mounts for President Kenyatta and NASA's Raila Odinga to dialogue.
6 days ago, the electoral body IEBC declared President Uhuru Kenyatta as the president-elect after garnering 7,483,895 votes, which is 98.27% of the valid votes cast in the fresh presidential election that was boycotted by his main challenger, NASA leader Raila Odinga. Since then, no one has moved to the Supreme Court to file a presidential petition to challenge the re-election of President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta. Activist Okiya Omtata had filed a petition at the Supreme Court terming the repeat presidential election as a sham. The petition, which was filed even before the results were announced, contested the validity of the October 26 repeat poll. Meanwhile, sources have intimated to KTN News that 5 petitions might be filed come Monday morning by a section of the civil society challenging the re-election of President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta. Despite the opposition NASA poking holes in the exercise where elections in 25 constituencies in Luo Nyanza were called off due to violence, they have maintained that they will not be moving to the Supreme Court.
To go to court to challenge a coronation ritual will be tantamount to legitimizing it. Acknowledging that it's an event that took place. For us, it's an event that was not there ab initio.
If no one moves to the Supreme Court by Monday midnight, President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta should be sworn in next week on Tuesday, the 14th at Kasarani. But even as the wait continues, a section of political and religious leaders continue to pile pressure on President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta and NASA leader Raila Odinga to drop their preconditions and agree to dialogue for the sake of the country's unity.
In the psyche of the nation, we really must be honest with ourselves. We must admit we have issues unresolved related to electoral fraud and how we manage our politics. And these are not issues the IEBC can solve alone without the players.
Apparently, the two main protagonists, President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta and NASA leader Raila Odinga, continue to show minimal interest in engaging each other.
You want to ask me, are you going to engage in dialogue with so and so and so and so? Let them first and foremost exhaust the constitutionally laid out processes.
Before engaging in any dialogue, you must also be clear what differences we are sitting down to resolve.
But according to NAC Kenya leader Martha Karua, a national dialogue that brings on board all political players and religious leaders is inevitable if the country is to unite devoid of any political affiliations.
Power is a shared space, even by the very design of the Constitution. So why don't we just listen to what we are saying? Are we saying when you win elections, the space, the constituency you have won becomes yours to the exclusion of those you are competing with?
Karua blames the current political quagmire to succession politics.
If we allow electoral fraud now, we can forget 2022 and just ask the Jubilee administration to tell us who is next, and they are already telling themselves they are the next.
NASA has already indicated that they will not recognize President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta and his regime and plans to push for a repeat of the presidential election within 90 days. Chris Dairu, KTN News.
The National Super Alliance plans to further its push for civil disobedience this week. Siaya Senator James Orengo, while leading a national resistance movement rally in Kibra, says the NRM will lodge petitions in county assemblies to form People's Assemblies countrywide. Here's Jeff Kirui with the details.
Just days after opposition leaders from the coastal region resolved to push for cessation in protest of President Uhuru Kenyatta's re-election, Siaya Senator James Orengo says a petition to the county assemblies to jumpstart the process is ready to be tabled this Thursday.
Na hiyo People's Assembly kikao cha kwanza itaanza ndani ya wiki mbili. Sasa tunasema ya kwamba kama kuna county assembly ambayo inataka kupitisha mambo ya secession, hiyo ni haki yao.
The National Resistance Movement continue their push under the slogan Resist, urging their supporters to boycott products and services from the companies they allege to have affiliations with Jubilee Party.
We want to inflict maximum pain on the companies being used to subvert democracy in this country.
Katika biashara, the most important thing is the customer. Mtu wa maana ni nani? Customer. So tunaambia Uhuru, thank you very much. You have the companies, but Raila has the customers of the Republic of Kenya.
And with President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta expected to be sworn in on the 14th of this month, if no petition to dispute his re-election is filed at the Supreme Court, NASA MPs have threatened to have a parallel swearing-in ceremony for Raila Odinga.
Nataka kuambia, hakuna mchezo hapa. Sisi tunasema hakuna siku Uhuru ataapishwa kama rais wa Kenya. Wakiapisha, tunaapisha. Wakiapisha, tunaapisha.
Raila ndio alishinda kura tarehe 8 mwezi wa 8. Na ikiwa wewe uamini kwamba Raila hakushinda kura Jubilee, nisikize vizuri, you have the following options. Option number 1, nenda ufungue sawa.
If you have any doubt, there is no major Western power ambao wame congratulate Uhuru Kenyatta kwa kushinda uchaguzi. Wakati huu wamekataa kutuma pongezi na risala za pongezi kwa Uhuru Kenyatta. Na kwa hivyo mjue hii barabara ambayo tumechukua tutafaulu. Na ninahakikisha tumechora na tumechora na tumechora.
NASA is pushing for fresh polls within 90 days from the date of the 26th of October repeat poll. Jeff Kirui, KTN News.
The government says it will cover all burial expenses for Eldoret Catholic Diocese Bishop Cornelius Korir, who died last Monday. Deputy President William Ruto said that the state will be honoring the late bishop's contribution to peace building, reconciliation and cohesion.
It was a day to celebrate the life of departed Bishop Cornelius Korir. His mass attended by top leaders from Rift Valley, including Deputy President William Ruto and his wife Rachel. Ruto described Korir as an ideal peace advocate who went out of his way to enhance cohesion and unity among different communities.
We will work hard and ensure that the transformation of our country moves full steam. And all of us work towards building the bridges of friendship, of brotherhood, of unity, so that we can have one nation.
The DP asked Kenyans to honor the late Bishop Korir through embracing peaceful coexistence and working in unity. Others described Korir as a dedicated religious leader who radiated peace and goodwill to everybody, despite the political affiliations or social status.
Askofu Korir alifanya mambo ya muhimu katika taifa la Kenya. Tutumie muda huu wote sasa tukieneza yale mazuri ambayo askofu wetu alifanya hasa katika mambo ya amani.
Time Bishop alienda akademand kukutana na wakora wote. Sasa hao wakauliza huyu mtu anaitwa Bishop ni nani, anataka kutuona. Akaambiwa ni ule kiongozi anaongeanga na ule wa juu.
Needed to ensure that we secure our border between Nandi and Kisumu, and asked me to continue engaging with my counterpart from Kisumu County just to be sure that we are able to maintain peace.
Over 100,000 guests are expected to attend the funeral service next week ahead of the burial that will be conducted at the Sacred Heart Cathedral in Eldoret. Elvis Kosgei, KTN News, Uasin Gishu County.
Now, as NASA politicians gear up for their plot for civil disobedience at the coastal region, a new debate is taking shape, that of cessation. Leaders allied to Jubilee Alliance have criticized Mombasa and Kilifi governors for their calls for cessation.
The answer to marginalization is not secession. The answer is visionary leadership and strengthening of the evolved system of government. Unfortunately, as other counties that suffered marginalization in the past have made tremendous strides in improving the lives of the people, Mombasa and Kilifi have worsened marginalization and made a mockery of devolution.
What I'm reading is people want to get political mileage. They want to run away from accountability, undermining devolution, which has now taken root in our country. And therefore, I really urge the coast people to ignore totally these calls. Because look at the profiles of the people who are discussing secession. Yeah. Do they have something to show? Before you blame the national government, before you blame anything on Jubilee, what have you delivered to the people?
You're watching Checkpoint. We want to take a small commercial break, but when we return, that conversation with Dr. Uhuru, the leader of Third Way Alliance Kenya, we have lots to talk about.